your first question, if you don't mind putting into the chat, we'll do a little chat storm. Don't hit enter until I say so. Who's a great leader that you admire and why? Now you can give them, like, you can share the name. It could be someone you know, it could be someone famous, but who's a leader you admire and why? If you want to sort of share like a scripted name, you totally can. It's more the why that I'm interested in. So take a couple minutes to think about that. Who's a great leader you admire and what is it about them? What are some of their attributes that you really admire? So take a second and we're going to put that in the chat. We'll just give everybody a second and then we'll do a chat storm. Give me a little thumbs up once you've got your answer so I can sort of see where everybody is at. Okay, I'll give you a couple more seconds and then I want you to hit the enter button and let's see what we get. And we'll take a minute to read everybody's answers. So 3, 2, 1, put it in the chat and press enter and let's see it pop. And now just take a couple moments to scroll up and down to sort of see what people's answers were. Everyone had everything they needed to be their best. I love that. Oh, Sunil, breaking my heart here. I love it. My mom worked. Amazing. Broke boundaries. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Fantastic. Step outside comfort zone. So people that push us, step us outside of our comfort zones. Oh, Wendy, come on. Thanks, buddy. I admire you too. That's so awesome. Thank you. Yes, the whole self is really, really important in anything that we do, whether we're creatives, whether we're accountants, whether we're engineers. Knowing ourselves on the whole and how we show up is pretty important. Oh, your mom as well, Kristen. That's awesome. My director. So some of the things that we're seeing is really like dad, growth mindset, are really like behaviors, like growth mindset, pushing us out of our comfort zones. Like really this call to like supporting others to be the best version of themselves, to get out of their zone of comfort, if you will, and just get, and just like I just said, be the best version of themselves. So that's great. Now the question I have for you, think about this for a second. Who might be some of the people on your team, in your world, you know, Robin, in some of the organizations that you're working with? Who are some of the people that you think like they've got the talent, they've got the education, they've got the capabilities based on maybe their experience and their education, but really what's missing is sort of that next step in their leadership? Who are some, like what I'd like to call future rock stars in your world that you think that with a little extra support, with some more resources, with people to push them outside of their comfort zones, might really be taking that next step in their leadership? So take a minute. You don't have to share this with me. I just want you to put you in the right headspace. Who are some people in your world, like Sunil, think about your team that you just think that like all the variables are there, but with an extra support, with some extra guidance, they really could ramp up their game. Just take a second and think about that and write their names down. You're not going to share them in the chat, but write them down because I just want you to like hold them in your head as we go through this. Fantastic. So Sunil ended the chat with a really great comment. Like a lot of these are soft skills, and it's so true. Like, you know, when we think of some technical skills as it relates to like managing, it could be like running an effective meeting, or it could be like, you know, delegating. You could sort of go both ways, but like really these are soft skills. Like really these are human behavioral skills that like aren't necessarily easy to master. It reminds me of a dentist I once coached who was looking to really improve his interpersonal skills with his team. And he really kept asking me for like, where's the rule book, Carolyn? Like, I just need you to give me the manual on how to do this, and I'll follow it and it'll be good. And it was just such a laugh for me because I was like, oh man, I wish I could write the book, but like humans are messy. Humans are tough. And truly, 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 like I say this and it's obvious, but it's not. We are all so different. Our brains are so different. How we how we show up is so different. So learning how to interact with others, engage with others, be in relationship with others, it definitely falls into the soft skills. But in a way, I wish we could change that, because I feel like it's like the most important skills. Like soft sort of makes it seem like, oh, it's a nice to have, but really it's, in my mind, it's like table stakes to leadership. But I'll get off that soapbox. I'll stop ranting, and we'll keep moving along here. So we've thought about some leaders. We've thought about some upcoming people that we know. So where do we start? How do we start? And in 12 years of doing this, like I really, maybe closer to 15, actually, my math isn't very good, is I really hold this belief firmly that if we want to show up as great leaders, if we want to be those leaders that we envision, that it starts with this willingness and this readiness to be a better version of ourselves every day. And what does that mean? It means looking in the mirror to say, this is how I show up in my brilliance, and I'm going to play to that and not apologize for that. But it also means this is how I might trigger some people, or this is how I might be perceived under pressure. This is what can happen to me. And this is how I can take away from those powerful relationships. It's not easy work. Like it really isn't. There's nothing soft about it. Leadership is exercising a muscle every day to just be better. So it is, as Rumi says, starting with changing myself and knowing myself. When I think about a journey that an individual can take as it relates to being a leader, I've really tried to simplify it. You know, we can probably break these 3 phases down into probably a dozen phases. But really, if you think back on your own journeys, like what was the first thing that you ever had to learn? And it's that idea of self-awareness. And I'll tell you, 15 years into this game, like that never goes away. Always cultivating this awareness of ourself is a lifelong journey. So phase 1 is called leading self. It's understanding ourselves. Like it's understanding, you know, what our zone of genius is. It's understanding where we go under pressure. It's understanding our values, our purpose, our behaviors, our driving forces, our emotional intelligence. Like it's so many layers into that knowing of ourselves, so that we can then effectively partner with others. In leadership, we have many different types of conversations that we need to have with the people around us every day. We have conversations with prospects. We have conversations with employees. We have difficult conversations. We have conversations, what I call courageous conversations, where we have to call out a situation for the sake of making it better. I could just go on and on about all the different types of conversations, but knowing them, navigating them, understanding them really comes down to knowing how to effectively partner with others, and knowing when to have that conversation that is required. And then final phase of the leader's journey is really understanding how to lead, engage, inspire the teams and businesses that we are running. So it goes from this inside out approach to be eventually those leaders, you know, Sunil, your mom of the world, that are standing on stages, sort of like sharing their messages and inspiring others. So that's a very simplistic way of the vision that I hold for the leader's journey. But it's really the phases that I see us all needing to sort of go through in order to get to that sort of fully realized state that someone like Sunil's mom has achieved. All right. So quite often in the work that I do, I will coach the CEO or the founder, and I will coach the executive team, and people will come to me and say, okay, this is great, but how do we like distill this throughout the rest of the organization? How do we like spread this language, spread this knowledge without it costing like $8,000 a head for a coaching session, for a coaching program? And so really, this is where this program has sort of been born of, is this idea of taking the learning and the development of creating great leaders at the top and trying to spread it out through all levels of organization, starting with that phase 1, leading self. Okay. And so this year, we've done that. We've created a plan in order to bring people together to start doing that work in a very cost-effective way, but also I hope in a way that's like inspiring and fun, because you'll be working with like little running partners along the way. I'll get into that more later. But ultimately, at this level one leadership, it's about cultivating that level, sort of that understanding of self-awareness, of cultivating the winning mindset. A winning mindset right now, a growth mindset right now, I think is like fundamental to leadership. Like you can hear me like get so riled up. We are faced with so many constraints in the world, in our businesses, so many constraints. And it just feels like more than ever if we stop and look around the world. But all we can hold on to is that growth mindset to find the opportunity through these constraints. So that's going to be a part of this, really turning that mindset on to seeing the opportunities and not getting paralyzed in fear by constraints and obstacles that are following us. Knowing our unique behavioral characteristics, or what I like to call our zone of genius, communicating more effectively with others, especially people that are different than you. Those people can be sort of tricky sometimes. Amplifying your core competencies, responding and regulating under pressure, that's emotional intelligence. So these are a lot of the core topics that are going to come out of the core outcomes that are come out of the topics that we are going to be using in the leadership. How does this sound so far? What do you guys like when I start talking about winning mindset, growth mindset? Like, where does your brain go? Question for later. I'm going to do it right now. Sunil, I like it. Does a winning mindset have to mean growth? If so, I disagree slightly. Or are we talking more personal behavioral growth, not bottom line growth? Okay, unmute yourself here, Sunil. Let's talk about winning mindset for a second. What are you noticing?
What am I noticing? Like,
what did that sort of spur for
you see it a lot in the construction industry that I'm in, where we talk about growth, and growth is all about, more business, more revenue, more profit, all of that. And talking about behavioral leadership, soft skill development, growth, I think that's great. But growth for the sake of increasing revenues and profits, I mean, we're all in this to make money, right? But I think it's important. At least I think there's a subset of thinking that thinks growth for the sake of growth is success, right? And I'm trying to get away from that mindset.
I agree. I think that so what I want everybody to be aware of, like today's conversation falls into the bucket of being. We're in the being category here. So when I say winning mindset, it's like a very sort of, it's just that it's a belief that like we can overcome obstacles. It's not necessarily about bottom line. Like we're talking about human behavior today. We're in the being category of human behavior. And the concept of growth mindset was made famous by an author called Carol Dweck. And I would argue that her book, I think it's Growth Mindset, is probably my top 3 favorite leadership books of all time. It was a COVID walk and listen. And I will tell you, it is a game changer. And really, it's all about mindset. It's all about framing the way we think and the way our brains have been conditioned since such a young age around like winning and losing and like right or wrong. I think right or wrong is a better answer. But growth mindset is about seeing opportunity and growing through adversity. There's not a pass and fail in life as we've been raised to believe. I mean, yes, Sunil, there's black and white in engineering, because if you don't, there could be safety issues. But there's also there's got to be a bit of gray space as it relates to bigger problems and challenges, to see that we can connect dots in our brain in a new and different way. And when human beings collectively connect dots, we can find some pretty interesting new ideas and new solutions. So that's what, to me, cultivating a winning mindset is really, I should have said more like cultivating a growth mindset. But I like winning because it's like, sort of just speaks to like, championing overcoming an obstacle. That's what it means for me, like not letting go of that.
Okay.
But thanks for clarifying. Does anybody else have any questions so far about what I'm talking about as it relates to leadership, as it relates to leading self? Justin, what's popping for you?
A lot of things these days, like we're entering some uncertain times, but I have the winning mindset of like, and confidence that the team that I work with day to day are able to overcome any challenge, in large part due to like the understanding of some of the assessments that we've kind of done for each other. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world that I'm in right now, but I'm readily embracing a lot of the challenges that are coming my way because I feel really good about the dynamic within my team.
Amazing. Way to sum that up. I just want to like do a little quick temperature check. Hey, everybody, who feels like they've got a lot going on in their worlds right now? Put up your hand. Who feels like they're suffering, or not suffering, but facing some like totally new and different constraints that they've not really necessarily seen before? Put up your hand. Melissa, awesome. All right. We're going to talk about constraints, and that actually tomorrow in a different webinar. So come back for that tomorrow. But really, these are like very uncertain times. Like we're moving so quickly. Technology is moving us so quickly. We're seeing a complete shift in the labor market, right, Robin? Yes, Robin works in HR and recruiting. We're seeing like, disruption to supply chains. Like we're seeing so many more obstacles, I think, externally than we have in a while. And so I do think that starting with ourselves and starting with where our brains are wired and training them for growth is like the foundation. It really, really is. And so, Justin, I really feel like that is what you just said. And I echo that. So it makes me so positive to hear that you've already adopted that within yourself. So those are just some of the outcomes that we can expect participants to sort of dig in on as a result of the training. A question for me when I sort of sent this out to a few people is like, well, what's in it for the business? That's nice that we want to do this, but what's in it for the business? And what I see happening in businesses right now is that, things are moving really quickly for a lot of people. And when things move quickly, we have our communication starts to sort of break down because we're just responding to the problems and challenges at hand. And so what's in it for the business is really a few things. It's one, this like increased ability to communicate, and ideally communicate across the aisle to departments and functions that are different than us. If I had $1 for every company that said, hey, can you fix my team's IT and marketing so that they can communicate more effectively, I wouldn't be in business anymore. We've got two, Dorothy's smiling there a little bit. We've got two very different worlds that have to work hand in hand, but have a tough time doing it. So through this training, we can understand what it is that sort of is their zone of brilliance, and they can understand what our zone of brilliance is, so that ideally we can break down the barriers to our communication so that we can be collaborating more effectively, just through a better understanding of people who are different than us. We will have a commitment to a learning culture. I honestly believe that a learning culture and organizations that are not afraid to just keep learning, keep growing, adopting that growth mindset, they just do better. And it's actually a way more fun place to work, really. They will have a clear understanding of how we do things around here because we're communicating more effectively. We'll have a group of self-aware leaders who practice something I call radical responsibility. This is a concept out of the book Conscious Leadership, and it's that true embodiment of like, even if there's not a standard operating procedure for this thing, I'm going to go and fix it because I believe in radical responsibility. I believe that I can take responsibility, and I feel empowered to go and solve this thing and know that, win or lose or pass or fail, the team will have my back because at least I did something. I think one of the things that really holds organizations back, especially in times like this, where people are moving quickly, is sort of that accountability. Is like, it's that, is accountability. That's the bottom line. So the opposite of accountability is radical responsibility. And like I said before, strength in communication. So ultimately, what's in it for the business is a stronger culture, is leaders who are engaged, they're excited to learn, and that we're practicing difficult conversations, that maybe we're talking about the things that are actually going to move the business forward versus always just avoiding it because that's just the way we've done things around here. How is it going to work? The program logistics. So I have a basically 9 to 10 month calendar laid out, which I can make available to you. And what's going to happen is the first Wednesday of every month, organizations are going to come to me, similar like we're doing today, in a webinar style for 90 minutes. And in that first Wednesday of the month, we're going to all be together. We're going to have engineering firms. We're going to have law firms. We're going to have HVAC firms. We're going to have creative firms, people just all coming together to just learn. It's going to be very much webinar style with a few reflective questions like I've given you. Depending on the group and as we get going, I might send you off into breakout rooms with your teams, but mostly it's meant to be training. So I'm going to be talking at you about these topics and giving you some homework and some reflection. Then 2 weeks later in your organization, someone like a Dorothy, someone like a Sunil, someone like a Kristen is going to take a group of leaders from their organization, and you're going to have like a little meetup, and you're going to follow up on the homework that was given from the training. You're going to ask the questions, what's working, what's not, what's getting in the way. You're going to ask the question, like, how does this apply to our organization today? And you're going to lead your little running group, your little training group, your pod, your performance pod in some discussion for 90 minutes around the learning. Those internal sort of champions will be given extra sort of group coaching and training to support them in those conversations. It was really important to me to design this program this way with internal champions so that at the end of this, like, you can take this and have it for yourselves. That there's this real accountability to the organization, to that learning culture, that we are building internal champions, future leadership coaches to run this within their organization. I could have had outside coaches come in and run these little accountability groups, but I wanted to do it differently. I feel like what makes training stick and what makes it not stick is when I fly in, I deliver some material, I get out, and no one owns it. There's no champion. So we need a champion. We need that person that cares about people as much as I know Dorothy does, just putting you on the spot. That's going to be like, hey, I'm the people champion here, and I want to see us all grow together. All of this is going to culminate. You're going to be doing you're coming to the webinars, you're doing your accountability groups. You might have like an hour of reflection and discovery in that month to keep working on this to make it stick. I don't think it's going to be a heavy lift. It might feel like a heavy lift because your brain is going to be wired for like training, and like your brain is going to be wired for your personal growth and discovery, but it's not going to be a heavy lift. In coaching, we always say, like, you get out what you put in. I'm going to give you all the book recommendations. I'm going to give you all the reading topics. You don't have to do it all. You just take what you want, you think about, you reflect, you observe, you write, and then you discuss. But all of it will culminate in your own little, you're going to do a video presentation at the end, a 3 to 5 minute little video presentation. You're going to go through all of your notes through the course of the year, and you're going to really create your own little capstone project around your personal leadership. Where did you grow? What's your zone of genius? What got in the way? What was an obstacle that really taught you something as a leader to think differently, to show up differently? So it's all going to culminate in this little wrap-up session that you can share with your organization. You're not going to be sharing it with this greater training group. Maybe you will, Maybe we'll all become best friends at the end of it and you'll want to, but really it's about you sharing your learning back into your little training group, possibly your organization. That's up for you in these internal little pods to design together. But there will be some accountability at the end. I've got the topics down below. Again, I can send you more of these details later on. How do we measure effectiveness? You know, you take let's take an engineering firm, and they're going to definitely want to know how do we measure the ROI back to the company? So how does this work? Well, many of you actually have already done the Try DNA or a Talent Insights assessment. So half of the assessment's already done. The two other pieces I definitely need everybody to do will be an emotional intelligence assessment. And if you haven't done a core competencies, but I will have different conversations with each of you because you have all done different sets of my assessments, or you might not have. So you will know one-on-one from me what assessment you need. Then you will do a pre-training leadership sort of intake where we'll sort of evaluate your current state right now, where you want to learn and grow, what's happening. We have at Better Your Best an internal portal. Sunil's seen it before, where you can go in, we'll post some homework, some questions, and it'll be like your digital journal where you'll go in and post some of your reflection questions in that. So that at the end of this training, there's one place for you to go to read through your notes and see where have I learned, where have I grown to make that video. So we'll be using our digital portal for that. And then you'll do an assessment at the end. You'll do your video, but you'll also do an assessment. And like I said, I've already talked about the video. So that's how we'll be measuring your effectiveness. It will also involve a conversation with your group around how do we keep this alive within the organization and what are we reporting back to key stakeholders. So that's the plan for that. And it's going to look a little bit different for everybody based on everybody's firm's objectives, if that makes sense. Any questions on the program or measuring effectiveness so far? Put up your hand, unmute yourself, pop it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm just going to scan your faces to see if anybody looks like they might have some questions. Sunil, any questions so far? No, you're good. Justin, any questions so far? Pretty self-explanatory. It's much easier to sort of chat this through, I think, than sometimes type it up. I will send you more. I'll send you all this information after our call today. So the internal champion, I've already spoken to that a little bit. Each organization will have one. We will do some extra coaching and training with these champions. You will each be coming together from your organizations for this training. There's also an opportunity to sort of like proactively design this internal champion training together so that we can sort of make sure that we are supporting you as leaders to facilitate these conversations, to sort of loosely lead team coaching conversations to be as effective as possible. We'll also be giving you a few primers for your groups, things to be checking in on. We are willing and ready to handhold the champions through this as much as possible. So we'll do this group training. We'll send you some reading. What's the lift involved? I would say above and beyond the 3 hours a month of the training, I would probably say maybe 1 to 2 hours to prepare yourself for your accountability sessions. I think that might be the lift in the beginning, but once you get going, we'll just find an agenda and a rhythm that works for you guys. And I think it will become less and less. But then again, at the end of the session, sort of communicating how we're going to bring the learning back into the organization, that will be up to you guys, and we'll support you through that. This is loose. We can note, these dates, February 8th, May 10th, November 8th. Once we sort of lock in the final participants, we can design this based on people's schedules and availability. Any questions on the internal champion? Dorothy, what do you think about becoming an internal champion? What do you think about that concept of taking it back into the organizations?
For me, we have a pretty small kind of leadership team. And when I think about the internal champion, I would think that I was trying to think of other people that could do it who are not me. because
Okay.
I am always the internal champion, and maybe to have the kind of peer-to-peer, the learning land better.
Yes.
Is there someone who's maybe not me would be more appropriate to lead? There's someone
Interesting.
who's not already kind of like reaching for that kind of leadership role.
Yeah.
Can be a leader within the team.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my initial thinking.
That's interesting. That's great. I will say, like, no matter what, we want them to have that deep desire that they care about people. Like, don't get me wrong, every human being cares about people, but like, there's certain people that are a little bit wired to like support each other than others.
Yeah. But I do like that it provides that kind of consistency that the organization has internally, and they're not reliant on maybe an external to work through challenges as they go.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Nikki, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Are you still with me? I know you said you had to pop off. And
yeah.
What are you thinking about the internal champion? What do you think about that concept?
No, I love the concept of it. So we'll hold whoever it is accountable to make sure that the leaders are actually going through this program effectively. I think,
Yes.
I think it's a great idea. My concern would be that all the accountability falls on them.
Right. Yeah. Well, the accountability for running the program, you mean?
And yeah.
And what's the downside of that? What are you worried about?
That I'd like the leaders to take their own accountability.
Right. No, absolutely. The leadership development and growth has to 1000% come from the participants. The champion is just there to champion them. It's just to sort of provide communication, give them maybe an extra reminder. But we say in coaching that if you're going to really achieve great transformation, it requires willingness and readiness and radical responsibility to do the work. So that's the foundation, 1000%. But good for calling it out. Absolutely. So that's the information on the internal champions. So, February's coming quick, as it does when we start planning these things, the deadlines always come up really quickly. The people that are on the call today are obviously people that are quite close to my inner circle. And so I want to share with you this investment opportunity for the year. Let me share one thing with you. 4 to 5 month one-on-one coaching program at Better Your Best is just under $5,000. So what we are proposing is a way for you to bring some learning and development for your people for way less than that. So it's basically a subscription of learning and development for the year, whereby you have that internal champion holding people accountable. Online courses right now are so hot. Everybody wants to write a course. Everybody wants to run a course. I have deep experience with them. I can tell you that the completion rate of online courses is probably like 30%. So to do online learning and development really requires that accountability. And now accountability with an internal champion, I believe, is just going to make it that much more successful. And at this price point makes it much more accessible to people. So for 1 to 5 people, $3,750. Like I said, many of you have already done parts of the assessment already. So if you just need pieces of it, those will be different pricing. For 6 to 12 people, we're going to max it out at 12 people per organization. And if there is more than 12, I'll think of something else. I'll have to have that conversation offline. So when you do the math, like if you divide that by, let's call it 10 months, like there's your learning and development on a monthly basis. It's pretty accessible. If I go into an organization and I do a one-off training session, it starts at $2,500 per 2-hour session. So like I said, the impetus for this was creating a way for organizations to build leaders who can show up as awesome human beings and inspire others around them to be better and great, and to make it cost effective. And this is what I've come up with. I'm putting the pressure on to register ASAP so that we can start locking in some of the logistics sooner rather than later. So if you register before Friday, you get the reduced rate. And then after Friday, out to the market is going to be this other rate. The program is set to start on Wednesday, February 1st with the kickoff. And then the internal champion training is going to happen the following Wednesday. So there's a little bit on pricing. Feel free to screenshot that QR code. It's also will be sent to you as an email. So questions, any more questions about sort of the logistics, measuring what matters, the internal champion, anything popping? Ryan, is there anything sort of standing out for you that I might have missed? Ryan, putting Ryan on the spot there. Sunil, anything popping for you that I might have missed?
Nothing that you might have missed. I actually really like Dorothy's point. I think you probably know our specific office here and its leadership makeup.
Yeah.
And similar to Dorothy, I find that often I'm the internal champion on certain things, and it's tough when you're the only champion or you're the champion all the time.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, and again, I'm not trying to derail this. I'm wondering if there's an ability, Carolyn, where I could see more ownership of this for our firm and our office, if it could be something where maybe I'm attending that first session and I go back internally champion it, and one of the other 2 or 3 key leadership people in the Edmonton office, we rotate through who's attending the different sessions. So each person's in charge of coming back and presenting and championing it that next month, even though we're all kind of working towards the overall year. I don't know if that's a possibility or some version of that, right?
I think some version of that for sure. I mean, I'm loving how you're wanting to sort of like spread out the people championing. I'm loving that. That. You know, in my mind, the internal champion training was going to be like stacked on top of each other, so that like it would be progression. So I would just have to rethink that. But we can definitely have conversations around that. I actually think that's not a bad idea of having 2 or 3 people champion the meeting for sure.
Well, and it's just because then the other leaders don't feel like one leader is getting all the training and they don't feel valued and everything. It's kind of, the ownership's on us as a leadership group of 3 or 4 to get it. Anyways, something to discuss maybe on the side if you have time, but
No, yeah, for sure. I really like it a lot. Let's design it together for sure. And who else can I put on the spot here?
Carolyn, I have a question. Sorry, I really like that idea from Sunil. I could think of like a couple people just so that they're not always hearing my voice. But I was also wondering, so the first Wednesday of each month is, so every month we meet all the different firms? Yeah. Or is it just the very first? Okay, so we're all meeting. You're kind of... You're teaching, you're giving us content, you're presenting the topics, giving us some homework questions, and then we are responsible. Then we say, okay, this month we're working on this, and we champion that. And then next month it's a new topic.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Let me share. I'm going to just swap screens here. I'm going to share a different screen. Give me a second here. Exactly. So let's say we've got sort of 8 different firms on the call today. All of your teams would show up. It would be webinar style, like I say, talking at you. And then you would go away. The learning would be put in the portal, the digital learning portal, and that you would follow that homework and that you would meet 2 weeks later to sort of unpack that. As you go through, I really want to work with the internal champions to sort of gear the conversations and the learning to the organization and what's happening in that organization. So there'll probably be a few quick like touch points with some of the internal champions to say like, okay, how did that, driving forces, like what did you guys learn about your organization's culture as a result of knowing your driving forces? So really just want to reorient the training back to real world situations within the organization. Okay, bear with me here as I pull up this page. So this is the splash page that I'm going to send you guys if you haven't already seen it. So this is it's like, I think it's actually hidden on my website, but I'll send it to you. So it's got a lot of what I've already talked about, but this is just a different way that you can see it. So our kickoff will be February 1st. We'll sort of be designing the alliance and designing some expectations. There's going to be a bit of pre-work required before February 1st. Like if you haven't completed your assessment, you're going to need to do your leadership questionnaire. There's also a DISC video on my YouTube channel that I really want people to check out just because it allows us to jump right in. So there's DISC, there's driving forces, there's core competencies. The power of OKRs is sort of, it's different, but you have to come tomorrow to our OKR session to sort of learn. But the power of OKRs is this idea of that when I have autonomy of my work, when I have alignment, when I have agreement, like the results are incredible. We can achieve great things. So that one is a little bit about how do we put my leadership into practice for the organization. Personal performance plans, time management. So we sort of start with like these broad topics, and we're going to get a little bit tighter around personal accountability and how do I manage myself. We'll take a break in the summer. You guys are welcome. I know, Nikki, you had mentioned a couple of topics that were hot for you guys. You're welcome to keep something going in the summer. I do a scaled back schedule to be available for my children. So we'll take a break for the summer, and then we'll resume back in September with some big heavy hitting topics: conscious leadership, emotional intelligence, and courageous conversations. And really, like, these are building blocks the topics are building blocks that have been built on one another to gear us towards courageous conversations. You cannot have a courageous conversations without understanding conscious leadership, without understanding emotional intelligence. And you can't have sort of conscious leadership without understanding DISC and driving forces. So they're all sort of baked on top of each other to support you to have these important discussions. So there's a lot of thought that have been put in the back end to designing the topics this way. But this is just year one. Then there's year two, which is that being in relation with other, where we're going to do more on courageous conversations, where we're going to do more on coach leadership, on influencing, on prospecting. That's year two leadership plan is about those important interactions with others as a result of leadership. Okay. This is just year one. This is just phase one. There's more to come. Are you as excited as I am? Thanks for playing along, you guys. Kristen, any questions? What do you think?
No, it all sounds good. I'm just trying to envision like who from our group would be a fit to attend, because we really only have 3 or 4 leaders that lead people, but maybe there's other leaders that lead in different ways that we could incorporate into it.
If you don't have, like, you don't have to be leading people. You just have to have this willingness to maybe be a people leader down the road or be a better version of yourself. But really, it's about knowing yourself. Like at the end of this year, you're going to really understand yourself a lot better because you're going to put in that time.
Right. Yeah. And I think because we're a law firm, it's like traditionally you think of the lawyers as being the leaders, but like how do we incorporate more equality across all the different roles? So
doctors, lawyers, dentists, accountants, they never got this training ever. Right, Sunil? No.
I appreciate that you didn't mention engineers, so thank you.
I could have. I stopped short right there. But really, it's, as Sunil said, it's like the soft skills like that companies don't put a value on. Like when we go out for grant money from the government, they're like, no, you can't measure that. And I'm like, but you don't understand. This is the most important thing in an organization. Like measuring someone's technical abilities. Yeah, that's great. But if we want to build great companies, especially in such trying times, we need resilient, resourceful, growth mindset leaders who can go and inspire others around them to find them the solutions. Thank you so much, you guys. Like I said, today is really about sharing this leadership program. Pressure is on to get us going, signed up, get the schedule going. And so if you need to have another conversation, I have got time tomorrow. I've got time Friday. Let's talk about what this could look like in your organization. Just drop me an email. You'll be getting an email tomorrow with the recording and all the pricing. Tomorrow, I'm having a totally different webinar. I'm not sure if any of you are signed up. Maybe Nikki and Melissa are. It's all about agility and OKRs. So it falls into the doing side of running a business. It's how do we get people aligned around the right priorities, around the right objectives, and how something like implementing OKRs can help you do that. So if you are free and you want to sort of continue the conversation with Carolyn tomorrow. I highly recommend you jump on that call. But tomorrow falls into the doing bucket. Tomorrow's a doing conversation and how to align your team around priorities more effectively to get the results that you want. Let me just quickly share this screen. Let me see. I'm not sure if Jen created a QR code for that. Don't know if she did. Hold on. But I will send it in the email later today. So, there is a QR code. Are you looking at the QR code? Yeah. So that's for tomorrow at 12 o'clock Pacific time. Again, all of this, Sunil, will be run at 12 o'clock Pacific time. So hopefully you guys could carve that out. Maybe you work later and that's when you take your lunch on those days if you sign up for it. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me today. Feel free to pop off if you have to. If you want to stick around and talk about any of the concepts that I brought up, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to stick around.